Warning: the following program may contain material not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Kill the noise and cut the static. Broadcasting from high in the mountains of West Virginia, we're leaving the 9 to 5 in the rearview mirror. The engine is warm, the lights are green, and it's finally time to shift your Wednesday into overdrive. And now, here's your host, Diego the Podcaster.
On this episode of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, formed in Raleigh in 2011, our guests are a four-piece powerhouse with the raw fury of 80s hardcore, the grit of 90s grunge, and that classic 60s garage bite. With 15 years of tearing up stages across the Carolinas and Virginia, an EP and a full length under their belts, and a fresh deal with River Monster Records, they aren't slowing down. In fact, they're headed back into the studio this year to do it all over again. This is Machinegun Earl. All this plus more. Please welcome our new friends and first-time guests, Machinegun Earl. My friends, welcome to Bonus Overdrive Wednesday.
What's up?
Hello, thank you.
My man, I was having so much fun during the pre-interview that I kind of figured, I should have just recorded that because there's so much gold we mined during that conversation. But we're going to definitely get into this later today. But before we begin, for our friends, the listeners of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, can you please introduce yourselves and your part of the band?
Sure, I'll start. My name's Mark Ennis, lead guitar, backing vocals, and yep. Sorry, I guess we'll pass over to Chris, I guess.
All right, Chris Dabbs. I play drums, the spoons, tambourine, whatever else they need. The cowbell, which I know my lead singer loves. But other than that's pretty much about it. I don't do any backing vocals or nothing right now. Mike.
Yeah, Mike Milner. I play the bass, 4-string, and I use a pick.
That's quite all right.
Except on that one song, he uses fingers now.
Now, I was surprised as I was reading a lot of the bio and some of the places you've been. It's a very small world because we probably passed each other many times on 95 or anywhere else in Carolina. And, 15 years, that's a very long time to be together, performing and having songs out there for everybody to enjoy. What is Machinegun's secret sauce? What is the secret that you guys have been together this long and you're still out there tearing it up?
I think we all just, beyond the music, we all have that in common. We all just have mutual respect for each other and just enjoy the chemistry that we've developed. We've all been in other bands before and played with other musicians, but just the chemistry that the four of us have developed over the period of time, it's hard to describe tangibly, but we just feel like we have something that's there that's really big, and that we think, what, I really like what I'm doing, and we want everybody else to hear it and let us know what they think.
And so we get along so well because we all have pretty much the mentality of an 8th grader. We're just a bunch of big kids is what we are. Just when you get us all together, and next thing we'll have a song written in 5 minutes. Just like, hey, wait a minute, play that again. Then next thing, boom, 5 minutes, song's written. We just know how we know how to gel, and it's just like I said, we can feed off each other. That's how we know each other so well. We can feed off each other, and that's the good thing about it.
Lots of jokes also.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you have to. Yeah.
As many jokes in the practice as there is songs.
And also couple of rough incidents that happened to the individuals in the band. We've all been there for each other when there were times where other people weren't, so there was, all of us had gone through, whether it's a relationship challenge or a health challenge or whatever, we've all been there for each other too, for things beyond the music. So it's just, we're all very good friends.
And that's the thing. I think that's, you said the secret right there. You're all friends, almost like family. We're talking 15 years. It's almost that you guys been doing this forever, for a lifetime. But prior to Machinegun Earl, there has to be some sort of history, either in other bands. So let me ask this: what was it like for you guys prior to Machinegun Earl? What was going on then?
Well, I've got a couple years on the rest of the guys here, but I had a punk band. Yeah. I had a punk band in the 80s and a hard rock band in the 90s, and it was more of I wrote everything, and it was more of a self-indulgent project than it was anything else. But I had people that would play music with me, and it's a good way to express my creativity and stuff, but none of it really went anywhere. And it wasn't until Colin and I met Colin 20 years ago. He was refinancing his house because he wanted to build a studio, and I was the loan officer of the mortgage company that was doing the loan for him. And I had stopped playing music for a while. And once I had moved to North Carolina, and he kind of got me back into it. And he and I started writing songs together or whatever. And then eventually we met, Colin already knew Mike, but I met Mike, I think, in 2008. And then eventually we auditioned Chris in 2011, and that's how Machinegun Earl started. But yeah, prior to that, I had two bands that just went nowhere. Despite all the effort and stuff I may have put into it, we may have done. So, I've done more shows with Machinegun Earl in 2 weeks than, or in a month than my other previous bands did the entire time we were together. So,
yeah, me, and from before, I even started playing with these guys, I was doing, like the metal thing, the hard rock thing, a couple of different bands here and there. Played out a couple of different times, but then next thing I know, kind of job I do, I run a paint store. I had one of my customers come in. He was actually working with Colin one day, our lead singer, and telling him about, he said, hey, I know this guy, this is the drummer. And Colin said, hey, we need a drummer. So Randy asked me, so can I give him your number? So go right ahead. And then next thing you know, I talked to Colin for a few minutes, came over and sat down and auditioned. And when I sat down, I had never, ever in my life played any type of punk music or anything like that. The only thing I knew was like the Sex Pistols and the Ramones. That was the only thing I knew. Anything else, Agent Orange and all, these other ones, I didn't know not a damn thing about. Well, come in, sat down, within 10, 15 minutes, we'd sound like we've been playing together for like 15 years right then. It just clicked, just like right away.
Yeah. That was the first time that had ever happened to me too, and I'd been playing with other people before that.
And they've been stuck with me ever since. So,
yeah. After he auditioned, I got a call from Colin the next day. He was like, "That dude's coming back Saturday, and he's bringing his drums." So, we were like, all right. So that's how it started. That was February 2011.
And that's about the only thing, I've been playing ever since.
How about you, Mike? What was going on? How did you get to meet the guy?
I've known Colin since we were teenagers. We've skateboarded together and stuff. We lived in similar neighborhoods right next to each other. But I met him back when we were teenagers and stuff. And I was in another band, a kind of a stoner rock band, playing guitar and doing some singing. And I saw Colin. He came out and saw our band play, a couple of times. And then these guys, they had a bass player who was leaving the band. They had some shows lined up, and Colin called me and said, hey, man, you think you could fill on bass for me? I'm like, sure, I'll give it a whirl. And so I played a few shows with them, and they got another bass player, and he left after a while, and they called me back, and I played. That happened like 2 or 3 times, and then like the third time, I've been there ever since, just having a great time.
Yeah.
Was interesting. There's a reason why I asked about the background of individually of you guys' life before Machinegun Earl. Each one of you cited different influences or different types of music that you were into or playing at the time. And as we mentioned earlier, in the introduction, we're talking 80s hardcore, 90s style grunge, classic 60s garage music. And each era had their standouts. And some had legendary bands that nobody even heard of. And I think that was kind of cool because their sound stayed true to the scene. But if you can we go down the line here. What's the perfect storm of influences? What bands got you to the game that you said, I want to play kind of like them, but do my own thing?
I could tell, yeah, it's weird. My guitar influences were, my four main influences for guitar were actually Brian May from Queen. I was a big Queen fan since I was young. I mean, we're talking in the 70s too. So Brian May from Queen, Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath, Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd, and the more obscure one would be Kirk Kirkwood from a band, the Meat Puppets, out of Tempe, Arizona. Not a lot of people were familiar with them. They did have a kind of a hit in the 90s or whatever, but I was a big fan of theirs since the 80s. And I just, once I started learning how to play guitar, and then I started learning like the DC stuff that I was into, Minor Threat and Marshall Man, then I started learning all the West Coast stuff or whatever. It just started kind of generating just creativity. Oh, I can play something similar to this or whatever. And it I guess I was really attracted to the rebellious side of music or whatever. And it just kind of, just over the years of all of the rebellious genre, from the different periods have kind of, I got to the point, I guess, to where, and it was funny because back then I wrote all my own stuff, but now it's like the way that we write music now, one or two of us will have a riff, and then Colin and I will try and put something together, and then we'll run it by the rest of the band. And ultimately what we start with and what we end with are maybe close, but they're different. Everybody's got the input in it now. And we've kind of developed our own sound over the years as a result of it. And so, there's an example of me rambling and not answering the question. So I apologize, Diego.
No, that's fine. I know exactly where you're going with this.
Yeah, so I think it was just a combination of just all, everything over the years. And I did take about a 10-year break from music just because I burned out and then got married. And then my wife and I moved down here and it just said, I met Colin just through different circumstances. I was this loan officer. He was bound and determined to get me back into playing music, and it worked.
You got suckered in.
I sure did. I can't think of enough, and and it's just been a lot of fun. And with that and the combination of just, I guess, just the freedom of being able to throw out whatever riffs we have. And if it works, it's great. And if it doesn't, because, we've got, I don't know, close to 50 songs, but we've probably tried to write 300 something songs, and not every single one of them are, some of them are jam sessions, but not songs, so, but I think when we do write one, we know when we got one, if that makes sense. It's almost kind of like we're pretty, we're like, all right, yeah, or we'll know how to fix what we have to make it sound. Some of the songs came together like lightning in a bottle. Some of them was a little bit more, hey, we need to work on this. This is a little too monotonous. This is, or we put a little bit more thought into it than it didn't come as natural, whatever. So, but the good thing is our songs really are a combination of the, regardless of whether it starts with me or whether it starts with the riff that Colin had, or Mike's actually got a couple of songs that we're structuring, it's ultimately the four of us end up deciding how it's going to go. And so far it's been working.
Now, as far as the music scene down in North Carolina, I really can't speak too much of it because I haven't been there for a very long time. And the last time that I was around there. There was some metal bands that had a pretty good name, but I don't think, since I lost track of the scene, I'm not really sure what was going on. Now we're talking many years later, and we're talking about punk music. We even have metalcore. You have thrash bands, death metal bands. They seem to be springing out of North Carolina with punk music, because punk is heavy in its own ways, its own environment. It's a little bit different than most kinds of music. It's not for everybody, but it seems now that everybody's really getting into it. What, in your opinion, what's getting people back into rediscovering punk music? Because it seems that history's repeating itself, but in a good way.
I think it's, touching out just, when you're putting your own twist on it. It's not the old original, punk back from, the 60s and the 70s. But what it is, everybody knows now, we're just taking a blend, putting it all together and making it more modern. And that way they can understand it a lot better and they can get into it a lot better. I mean, because we'll have people of all ages that love our music. Anybody, from in their 70s or 80s on down to 8 or 9 years old. So that's a wide range, wide range for a music group, age group, and if it turns on all them people, you've got something.
And with that style of punk, Mike, let me go to you, because you talked earlier about playing in a I won't say doom, but what was it called? A stoner doom band? Is that correct, or is that
stoner rock band? Yeah, kind of like
sometimes
something like that.
Well, how did you transition those talents into punk? Because sometimes, punk is high energy, it's heavy too, but you gotta have to. I'm not gonna say sometimes lightning has to strike you in order for you to keep up with the rest of them. So, how did you make that transition?
Well, that wasn't too hard, because, like I said, I grew up skateboarding and we listened to punk rock all the time, so it was embedded in me already from then. And when I first started playing guitar, I played like surf rock, like Agent Orange, stuff like that. So it was up tempo music too. But as I grew as a guitar player, I got into more of like the stoner bands, and I kind of mixed some of that stoner effects in some of the Machinegun Earl songs, like in the breakdowns and stuff. So it's kind of, I don't know, you just take what you know and what you learn and just mash it all up and see what comes out. And if it works, keep doing it.
Yeah, it was described.
We've been able to incorporate some of it, yeah.
Like a punk with a southern edge is what we sound like.
Awesome! You're taking the formula, making it your own.
Yeah, exactly.
To get back to your question about like the explosion of the punk scene and stuff like that, there's a lot of it. There's a couple things. I think just the style is appealing again. I think people like to hear, rock and roll's always been rebellious anyway. So, and I think each generation sort of finds whichever groups, you've got bands that are getting a lot of recognition now, like a band called Turnstile, I think, is one that's out of Baltimore. You've got, a couple other bands that are like that are just gaining some popularity. And these fans are bringing in thousands of people to their shows. So they're also paying homage to some of these old punk bands, which are getting rediscovered. And as you say, people are big into nostalgia. So there was a lot of punk bands that were around from the 80s and 90s who have reunited and gone back on tours, redoing their first records or, playing their third record in its entirety and things like that. So they're kind of enjoying some of this resurgence of, people rediscovering some of this stuff. And I think just each generation keeps passing down the rebellious stuff to their, there was, and it seems to be more of it. And I think also the whole do-it-yourself movement is so good because anybody can go on with with equipment and record decent stuff. And now you've got so many sites where you can go and discover bands like us or other bands. There was, because we always hear, oh, there's no good bands anymore. And I tell you, we've been doing this for 15 years and there's always been good bands. Even band, you may not have heard of any of them, but we played shows with some very, very talented folks that wrote some very, very good music that I would, whether it's been recorded or not, it's even beside the point. But, it's really fascinating.
You remember it,
You sure do. It's really fascinating to see just the different approaches that people make. And I think another thing that I find fascinating that's versus the way it used to be is people are a lot more open-minded and accepting of music than they were in the 80s. Bands like us could have been booed off stage if bands like Alice in Chains got booed off stage playing with bands like Van Halen. Now we've done shows with bands that you probably wouldn't normally match us up with, and people were just as we played it with a couple of country music bands on a bill just because somebody got us. Remember that in Wilson?
And the Elks Lodge. No, the Moose.
Yes,
Moose Lodge.
Yes, the Moose Lodge or whatever. We ended up putting a pound band or whatever. But we, and I can tell you, no one else played what we were playing. But a lot of people. Now there were a couple people that had their fingers in ears walking out, of course, or whatever. But a lot of people came up and they were like, I really like that. It was such a change of pace from, so people were really very complimentary of it, even if it wasn't their first choice or something that they were expecting. And also we'll play at some club and all of a sudden some guy who is sitting at the bar by himself that seems to be our age will start playing. He perks up and then just comes over. Oh my God, I haven't heard this kind of music since I was in college. Stuff like that. So it's really, from the outside, you probably don't see it as much as you do once you're inside the clubs and see what all is going on. But the scene's always kind of alive. Sometimes the clubs are a little empty, but they seem to be back in vogue now, and also COVID did a number on everything too, which I'm sure.
Yeah, that changed a lot of things.
It sure as hell did. Yeah, it sure did. It ruined a lot of good times for everybody, but at the same time, and I hate to call it this because COVID sucked straight up.
Yeah,
it was the worst 3 or 4 years anybody can in this country as far as personal freedoms is concerned. That's a whole different type of topic. But it gave people time to rediscover things. It gave people time to create. You have new authors, you had new bands, you had, like for me, I started podcasting in 2020. All that came from COVID. So I think that the hunger is there now to go back to live shows, but it's taken time because the landscape has changed where I don't know how it is in Carolina, but there aren't that many rock clubs anymore, real clubs. I mean, there's dance clubs, you'll hear these kind of things, but now they have, I call it like a dual purpose locations where you'll have an arcade
pizza
place,
parlor,
pizza parlor, a surf shop, or a brewery. I went one a few days ago. They had a metalcore night. I would have never seen. They had a great turnout. So I think people now are good. You know what? We're gonna go back out and start watching these shows. And now, talking about shows, what is a typical Machinegun Earl show like?
Intensity wise and loudness wise, imagine, it's going to be balls to the walls and it's going to be AC/DC loud, or like loud. That's how, because, honestly, we don't turn down. We don't. Because that's how we play. When people want to sit there and mic our cabinets, I'm like, not a good idea because we like to play loud. But, but the intensity, it's like, it's right there. You're coming right at you. So,
and high energy.
Yeah, high energy. If you haven't been Earled before, you're going to be Earled after that. So,
yeah, it's neat because we don't look like we sound. People, if you've never seen us, they don't know it's getting ready to hit them. And then once we start playing, they're like, we sound old school, and then. By the time it's always fun to watch people's reaction when we start playing because, they're really not expecting to hear us. And then, but the people that do know us and come see us, they know that the shows are pretty. I said it's very high energy, and also, like you had mentioned, there were some venues that we used to love to play at just because. the vibe was just there. There was a bottle shop that it's still open or whatever, but it's called Clayton Beverage. And really in the 2.5 years, the 2 years that we played there, they must have booked us probably 8 or 9 times. And it was at the end of a strip mall. He would book shows on a Friday night and have bands play from 7 to 10. And it was a blast. $5 at the door. They serve drinks or whatever, and plenty of parking's well lit. And it was one of the places that got shuttered during COVID. But that was a place where it was just a lot of those places are real good for energy, and we're able to go and like one of our favorite clubs in Raleigh is called Slim's, and Slim's is one of those places we played there back in December for my birthday, and the energy
they don't call it Slim's for nothing.
Yeah, it's a real skinny, narrow place with a small stage or whatever, but just the vibe is so good. Just everybody's there to have a good time. Even if they're not normally into the bands, people will stand there and watch you play. And if they don't like you, they'll just keep walking. They're not going to be rude to you or anything like that. So people are pretty respectful on top of that too. But I think, pretty much at a Machinegun Earl show, it's just going to be a wall of energy. And, if you've never seen us, you're not going to know it's getting ready to hit you until it does. So
put on your seatbelt.
Stepping back to talking about COVID, it was a terrible time, as far as, your personal freedoms and stuff. But for Machinegun Earl, it was a very prolific period. I grew a lot during that period as a bass player and playing with these guys. And we wrote a lot of songs. We experimented a lot of different types of songs. And for our growth, it was a great period.
Yeah, we didn't stop. We didn't stop during COVID. They said, "Hey, you can't do this, you can't do that." So we were like, we were all
yeah. I mean, we flattened the curve, but as soon as they put the curfew on, we were like, we'll meet on Thursdays, and we did. We just couldn't play anywhere. But fortunately, none of us got COVID, so we were very, we took precautions. We were not dumb about it either. So
sure, you definitely had to take precautions. So you can never be too careful of something we didn't know too much about at the time. But once that was all said and done, so you have the influences, you have the experience, you have the energy. You got the 4 guys together. The perfect storm has come. You record your first EP, and on the pre-interview, I think we were just talking about it. Correct if I'm wrong. You were originally going to record only 2 songs.
Correct. Yeah,
and then it turned into 5.
Yeah, actually, I think we had recorded 6, but one of them didn't come out that well, and we were like, let's just work on these 5. So so we didn't even bother following up on the 6th one or whatever. But yeah, we had went in there to do, I think, I can't remember which 2. It was like Streets Are Ugly and Mechanical You or something like that, which are 2 songs.
Yeah, it was Streets Are Ugly.
Yeah, but before we did that, we warmed up. And as soon as we warmed up with a couple songs, the engineer Dick, he was like, "All right, stop, time out." And as soon as he did that, we were like, "Uh-oh." We thought this guy was like, get out. We thought he was going to kick us out. And he was like, I didn't know you guys were an effing punk band. He said, change your plans. He's like, let's record an album right effing now. And we were like, oh, okay. Well, so we ended up recording, I think, what we were warming up with, which, we ended up recording 6 songs. We finished 5 of the 6. The 6th one was Sift, which we just left off. We didn't do anything with it. So we worked on the 5 that there was too much we would have had to do for the 6th one. So we just focused on the 5. But like I said, that was kind of the first time that we were really in a studio. That was the first time in well over a decade I was in a legit studio. And the guy was very nice and professional, worked well with us or whatever. But like I said, also I think some of us had some preconceived notions of how, how it is, when there's a lot of things you'll generate in your mind of how things are going to go. And then once you start working on it, you realize that you were wrong. So, but it came out okay.
Now, is that EP still available? Is it for download? Is there
Yes,
it is.
As a matter of fact, because I think I've got a handful of copies left, but the music itself is on Bandcamp, and all our music on Bandcamp you could download for free. Now there is a pay whatever you want, and honestly, I would rather, and sometimes people will throw us money when they do download it, but I'm more interested in people downloading the music and like we can sell the physical copies of the CDs, but we just want people to, if people like what they hear and then want to come see us live, I think that's more what we're looking for. So,
because I guarantee you, live it'll sound just like what it is on the CD, if not better.
Yeah.
Well, that's very important because you guys are very experienced, been out there. I can only talk from a fan's perspective, the end user, where you can listen to a band on a CD, record, or cassette, or I've had them all medias. I've even had 8-tracks back in the day every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I'm aging myself. We're not going to talk about that part. But you can go to the show. If I were to take two things together, I'm going to say record, live show. Record. You don't sound nothing like this record. And that's okay. But you're just Machinegun Earl is Machinegun Earl no matter what format you get.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of it because it's you heard it here, you're gonna go there, but you're gonna hear it even louder. And I think that's the beauty of what Machinegun Earl is about.
That's pretty much exactly a perfect way to describe it. The last record that we recorded, which was in 2023 and we got released in 2024, was literally that. It was us being captured live and then us going and then, then going back and then laying down some of the parts, redoing some of the parts or whatever. But that's about as close as we had got captured. But still, as you said, if you come see us live, you're going to hear what you heard on the record and a little bit more intense.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, you'll recognize it.
That's one thing the recordings don't really capture from my perspective is our energy and intensity live. Is that we haven't really gotten that down on record yet. The songs, yes, the songs sound the same when we play them live, but you just don't have quite the intensity.
As when being in a live show.
Yeah.
I was going to mention it because you can listen to a lot of bands, and this is not you, so I swear I'm going to get to the point. I get to get long-winded, Mark. We talked about that earlier. Where
all right.
You can listen to certain bands from the same type of either era or style of music. You can listen to one band from the same time, and that's that band. So in a sense, you can listen to 100 punk bands from whatever one night. You'll know who Machinegun Earl is because it's going to stand out. Because you're doing it your way, you're doing it differently. And that's the kind of thing I think that resonates with the fans because, I can listen to all these bands, but there's something about Machinegun Earl. And that's what drew me to you guys. So I'm just kind of giving you a little confession of how I became fans of your sound.
We had one guy tell us one time, it was, matter of fact, it was Bad Santa and the Angry Elves. You remember that, Mark?
No.
We were supposed to actually play a show with them up in Chapel Hill, and it was Bad Santa and the Angry Elves. You remember that, Mike?
They played Christmas music, but they played punk Christmas music.
Yeah, punk Christmas music. Instead, like Rage Against the Machine, instead of killing in the name of, it was giving in the name of. But he actually had sent me a message. He said he liked us a lot. He said, because you guys sound like you're playing with a chip on your shoulder. And I said, sometimes we feel like we are sometimes. We just think we got a thing, so we need to prove, out there. But, just that's why we go out there and do what we do. But I don't, we never played with them. I think one of us or something, I think we had to call out or something that night. We missed something. Anyways, but.
Interesting. Now I don't remember that. That's funny.
He said we had a chip on our shoulders, and he said he liked that. I'm like, well, it's good that you always got to have an edge. No matter what you play, what kind of music you do, whatever music you write, you got to make sure you have an edge. And that is one thing we have is an edge.
Which brings me to the next question I'm going to ask, because you guys are headed back into the studio this year, right?
Yeah. May 17th.
Now, this will be your first record with River Monster Records, correct?
Actually, River Monster released the one that we recorded, but they put it out on CD for us. This will be the first one that we've recorded since we've signed with them. So, and we're going in to do 4 songs.
Okay, now with that being said, with all the songs you've released so far and the shows you've done, being together so long, I can assume that it could be a challenge to, I wouldn't say try to one-up your last release. Are you keeping the formula the same, or are you going to turn this up to 11?
Oh, it's going to 11. Yeah, we
exactly. I agree with you on this one.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, I think I don't want to say it gets easier each time, but we're more experienced each time that we go into the studio. And even though the songs that we're going to be recording this go around are 4 of the newest ones that we've written, we're tighter now than we were even, a couple years ago. So, and we just do that just through repetition. We play the songs a number of times or whatever. So we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to go in there and deliver it the way that we've been playing these songs live now for over a year. So the 4 songs that we want to go in and record have been audience tested. And then after that, we'll probably want to go in and do another 4 songs. It's just more of we can go and do that on a Sunday. We've got probably close to 50 songs, and we've recorded 17 of those songs total so far. We're getting ready to go in and record 4 more. So we still got other songs to record. And those songs, in some cases, we've been playing for well over 10 years. They just haven't been recorded properly. So, so in addition to, so as long as we're set up in the room, we're going to be able to deliver it the same way that we would live. And it's just a matter of what's the best take that we take. And we're hoping that we're going to be able to capture that kind of magic with the studio that we're going to. We're going to a place that's about 20 minutes from where we practice. So,
all right, it can't get no better than that. It's a close drive and, close to home. And out of all those songs that you've written, audience tested, which 4 did you choose? Or is that going to be a secret?
They're 4 new ones, and it was just more of they're so fresh that we wanted to get them out. And these, the 4 new ones that we've been playing that we constructed at the end of 2024 and into 2025. The first one is called Moth Pit. Has nothing to do with song, but that's just the title.
It started with another name at first, but then that got changed.
Yeah, but that had to do with some of the themes to our songs have to do with relationships, and it was just basically if you make somebody in the band mad, you might get a song written about you.
Yeah,
and we're not necessarily going to write your name, but we're going to talk about a situation. So, and then we'll get to that later, but Moth Pit was one. The second one that we're doing is called Surf a Tsunami. And that was just something that Colin had thought was funny. He had written down. He had a couple lyrics, and we ended up putting together a song and then finally finishing it. And audience tested it. It's very strange. We've got some of our songs we call Earl songs because they're definitely punk. They're weird, and they don't sound like anybody but us. Like you can't go, oh, that sounds like that. It doesn't sound like anybody but us. We've got a couple of those. Surf a Tsunami is one of them. And then the other 2 songs that we're going to record, one is called Bootlicker City, and that's probably one of our newest ones. And
it's about dirty cops.
Yeah, and the last one is No Politics, and that's more of
an anthem
relationship thing. Again, not necessarily a political statement as much as between 2 people. So
no, it's interesting because I'm sorry to be to cut you off. It brings me back to usually some of the best songs are called diss tracks from back in the day are from breakups. Right. Oh, kind of like, who was it? I don't even listen to her music. It's not even my thing, but I think
Alanis Morissette.
You read my mind. Uncle Joey. He kind of got a little trouble there.
Yep. So, I can tell you about my ESP techniques, and now I'm just teasing.
Oh, it works.
But yeah. But no, you're right. As a matter of fact, blues music, I mean, it's probably 70% of blues music has to do with relationships, either breakups, getting back together, fooling around with somebody, being cheated on, you name it, or whatever. So it's a very common theme in music. And I think a lot of artists are able to kind of get out some of their angst and emotions or pent up anger as a result of that. And we do it through our music on some of the songs, even though it'll be, you might read it, you won't necessarily figure out, so, but.
Sorry, man, you kind of froze a little bit on there, but that's today's internet, by the way.
Oh,
okay.
sorry.
We definitely got the gist of what you were saying, but yeah, that Alanis Morissette was out of control. But, she made millions off that song. So now, which brings me to talk about names of songs, but we're gonna save that for later. Let's talk about, every great band has an origin story behind their name, and usually it invites. You're talking about late night conversations, sharing a few pints of ale, or is it a weird inside joke of some sort? So how do we land on the name of Machinegun Earl? Chris, I'll go with you because Mark's currently frozen in time.
What we were all sitting there just trying to figure out, like you get a band together, you got something good going on. You try to figure out the names. Well, Colin, our lead singer, had this book. I mean, it looked like a book, that was about that thick, But in the back, there was like 2 or 3 pages. He had all these names written down of different band names. And I'm sitting there going down through them, and I'm sitting there looking. It's going to just taking me like 10 minutes to read it because there's so many names. And I'm like going through. I'm like, hey, the 6-shot Capone. That's pretty cool. But then you go and keep on going. And then I asked him about Machinegun Earl, and he told me what the origin was. There was somebody in his family, a cousin, that he was the only one that he would get along with. Because he was like the black sheep, and Colin was on the guest. So he wrote this thing. He used to like to play with machine guns. So that's the reason why they. He put that down, Machinegun Earl. I said, that sounds good. We need to try that. So we were sitting there thinking about it. We just put it all out there and tried it, even at our first show. He told people we were tossing different names around and said, what do you think about this? And Marson asked him, said, what do y'all think? They was like cheered it on, and it was stuck with us ever since.
Yeah.
Now,
sorry if my internet connection's living up to my expectations. It's called Spectrum.
It's your interweb.
That's okay. I have to turn off all the other Wi-Fi devices in order to get this, so I can get the show done. Because if not, I'll have that real circle of death in front of me, and I'm like, I don't want to get too upset. But so we're talking about the name Machinegun Earl, but let's do this because you have the album coming up here, and I'm gonna go around the room, and I'm gonna start with Mike. If you were to describe your next album in exactly 3 words, what would it be? Mike, I'll start with you.
I would say more punk juice than these things that were coming.
More punk juice. That's gonna be on the t-shirt. I love that. Chris?
In your face. That's how this is going to be, in your face, flat out. I mean, that's just all there is to it. It's going to be in your face.
Mark.
Best so far.
All right. They're all great, but if I'm going to choose a winner and I put this in the slogan of your back or your t-shirt, more punk juice. That's $1 million quote right there. I love everything about that.
Exactly.
And
I'm going with that.
You guys perfectly said, all 3 of you. And now we're going to get to the parts, one of my favorite parts of the show, where I get to play one of your tracks. And want to get a little backstory on this one, but I'll tell you my story. Back in the day, and this is why I thought it was about, and I think I might be close. Back in the day, back when I used to be in the wrestling thing, we had a promoter, and he was a trucker, an old trucker from the old days. He still kept a CB radio, and we kind of learned the trucker terminologies when we're going down the highways. And the warnings where you give you, Smokey is a mile marker 15 or XYZ, right? Every once in a while, you hear a voice on these radios, but it wasn't a trucker. So it's a little more of a female type voice. And they used to talk a lot of things on there. And I was like, what's going on? He was explaining to me what these people were called. And I think one of them mentioned something like they were at a Stuckey's somewhere in Virginia. I think it was off almost by the bowl. I don't know. It was Stuckey's, right? So I say, you know what? Let's just go to Stuckey's, man, and go meet this girl. Goes, no, you don't want any part of this. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, they get a certain word for them. I go, what are they called? He goes, lot lizards. Enter camper tramp. Because the second I heard the name camper tramp, the first thing I thought about was lot lizard. Not a lounge lizard. That's a whole different deal, different kind of lizard, but lot lizard. And the more I look into it, I might be right, I might be wrong, but am I even close?
Yes, actually, you were. Well,
in a way, he's almost there.
How about this? You got your foot in their camp. You're on the right path, but it's how about this? We'll go ahead and let Chris tell it or whatever. Since he kind of came up with the name or whatever. But
at the time when this song came about, we were sitting there trying to think of a name of this song. I mean, just riff. They were coming up with a riff and didn't. But also at the time, me and one of my ex-wives had, splitting up, which was my baby's mother, and she has left me for a guy that she met while working at a motel, and ended up staying with him down in his camper, and at the beach. But they ended up getting her boyfriend ended up getting kicked out. So I was like, hey, camper tramp, they get kicked out and all that, and so that's pretty much where. The camper does it. Just fuck yeah. I said that fucking camper tramp and everything. And then next thing you know, that's what came about. And it turns out, it was my daughter's favorite song. And for the longest time before she realized who it was about, she finally realized it was, that was about Mama, ain't it? Yep.
Oh no.
And I think it's still her favorite song too, isn't it?
It is. Yes.
But and then we spelled it the way that Supertramp spells their name, just all one word. So we just kind of wrote it out like that. But yeah, it was the origin story was from previous relationship. And like I said, you might get a song written about you. That's one of them.
You gotta be careful. If we didn't learn from Atlantis, we're gonna learn from Machinegun Earl. And before we go, for the listeners of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, our friends out there listening from around the world, they want to learn more about Machinegun Earl. Where you at? Where you going to be? Your merchandise? Where can they go find out?
All right. Next show that's coming up, we've got August 25th, and it's going to be at the 27 Club in Asheville, North Carolina. Oh, what did I say? Did I say August? Sorry.
April.
Yeah.
You're jumping way ahead of time.
We do have a show there on August 8th, too. I think I told you that. But anyway, April 25th, so coming up in a couple weeks. Sorry. We're at the 27 Club in Asheville. May 17th, we go into Wake Forest and record. June 6th, we're at Underground Silva in Silva, North Carolina.
Yes.
June 20th, we're going to be playing Colin's birthday party at Panther Lake. And then August, we're back at we're going to be back at Asheville and then back in Raleigh in August and September. So next show is going to be our first trip down to Asheville as a band. We're looking forward to it. 27 Club is supposed to be a really cool place, cool vibe, and a lot of bands that we know that
what it was named after.
Right. Yep.
Excellent. And you can find you on Facebook, Instagram, and also on Bandcamp as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. Spotify. We can stream us and all that. YouTube. Merchandise. We usually have that live. I think there may be a link on our Facebook page where you can go and get band merch, but you can always just reach out to us on our page for that. That's probably, not a bad way to do it as well. And like you said, any of the social media pages will work. So
awesome. And I'll for sure put all the links on the episode description. Once I release this episode, Mike, Chris, Mark, it's been a pleasure having you on. You know, the energy your music has, it definitely twins the energy and good time I've had with you here on this episode of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday. I'm glad I discovered your band. I'm glad that I had you on and met you. And now for, you know, I just love saying this word. This is Machinegun Earl with Camper Tramp on Bonus Overdrive Wednesday right now. Thank you, Machinegun Earl.
All content on this broadcast is a property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Bonus Overdrive Wednesday. The information shared on Bonus Overdrive Wednesday is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.